Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Katherine Diaz Fernandez. Some of you may have heard about this. Katherine Diaz Fernandez was an Olympic hopeful, and she died tragically on March 19th, 2021, when she got struck by lightning while she was surfing in some waters. I believe it was on a beach. It was near San Salvador, and the thing is, this is just, it's very devastating and a traumatic, really very horrific, horrifying way to go and to die. And I want to just give my prayers and condolences to the close friends and family members of her. And her birth date is July 27th, 1998. I got the birth date. It was on an Instagram photograph. I believe it was by her brother or either somebody close in the family. This was somebody. This was something. I mean, obviously something so traumatic and devastating. I'm going to talk about some placements in her chart and transits that might have contributed to this. Now, the thing is, well, first off, of course, July 27th, 1990, she is a Sun in Leo. It puts the, I had to improvise and do a solar/sunrise chart because I didn't have the birth time. But the solar sunrise chart does put the moon in Virgo, and it's likely in Virgo regardless of the birth time. And the thing about this is when I look at the Sun in Leo, of course, wants to shine, wants to stand out, could have very near inexorable energy, and the fact the moon being in Virgo likely is putting that into a lot of hard work and industry, and also I would say health and fitness, and just doing it through some kind of just laborious efforts and work related matters, and maybe striving, working very a lot of that in Leo, a Sun Leo, inexorable energy, but striving to do something to near perfection. And she was an Olympic hopeful. She was a surfer, and it's just terrible to die at such a young age, at 22 years old. Now, in her chart, the thing about it is, I'm looking at some placements in it, and she does have on her eighth house cusp in the solar sunrise chart. She does have Pisces. That by itself can sometimes manifest in a death by sea, because the eighth house, of course, is associated with death. Pisces can be associated with the sea. She also has the ruler of her fourth house of end of life in the solar sunrise chart, or one of the rulers, I should say, fall in the 12th house, Mars and Cancer. Mars, of course, is a water sign, but the 12th house is connected with the sea, because the 12th house in astrology does correspond with the zodiac sign Pisces. Now, another thing too is that when I look at this as well, another transit that stands out to me is at the time that this happened, that transit Sun was either at 29 degrees Pisces or very close proximity to it. And as many of you may know, the Sun at 29, well, I should say Pisces 29 degrees is at right very close to the fixed star sheep. And fixed star sheep can often bring about strong tribulation. It could be it could be connected with suicide and murder, but I would say also it can be a death by sea. It can be drowning, but it could also be death near the water. I think it would be safe to surmise that could be another way it could manifest. And this was in the transit Sun at or near 29 degrees at the time, was in her eighth house of death in the solar/sunrise chart, and it was conjunct her natal Jupiter in Pisces in the eighth house. Now, as I've spoken about in previous videos, Jupiter could be rather paradoxical. It could be very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. That may expand issues as far as life goes, and sadly, she did. The life did pass away as a result of the lightning and dying when she was struck by lightning in the water, and Pisces can be connected with water. So, and another thing, she also had transit Neptune in that eighth house of death as well, and that could be another indicator of being of a death by sea. Now, this and also too in the solar slash sunrise chart, she has one of the rulers of the eighth house of death in the eighth house, and one way that could manifest and pan out, it could indicate sometimes a volatile death, because remember that the eighth house in astrology, just what is connected with the eighth house in astrology are the planets Mars and Pluto, and you also have the fact too, it could also be a death that could maybe perhaps produce more trauma and physical trauma, and something that could happen with very fast, almost instantaneously. And also at this time she had transit Mercury in Pisces in the eighth house of death, and it's another that could be an indicator of where news would be reported of her being at by the water when she died. And this is also too, you look at this as well. I mean, I'm looking at her chart. Remember that the planet Uranus can be associated with lightning, and she does have in her chart, it's a rather long, you could call it a rather loose, long conjunction aspect between her Uranus in Aquarius and Neptune in Aquarius. Uranus can be associated again with lightning. Neptune can be connected with the sea. She also has, as well, she has Uranus involved. Some will call this controversial because I'm using Chiron as part of the Grand Cross. She has a fixed Grand Cross configuration, which consists of Saturn and the Sun in Leo. The Sun, of course, is about life. Chiron could be about wounds, but they could be about not just emotional wounds, but physical ones as well. Uranus can be associated with lightning and things that could happen very quick and spontaneously. Also, having Uranus in Aquarius in the sign connected with lightning, and I mean, the Sun again is about life. She does have the Chiron in Scorpio in the fourth house of the end of life in the sign connected with death, and then Uranus again is associated with lightning. Saturn can be connected with sorrow, despondency, and sadness. And the thing too is also at this time, as far as the electional transit aspect goes, it's interesting because transit Saturn. Well, transit Saturn was actually conjunct her natal Uranus at the time of her passing, but also transit Saturn and Uranus were making a fairly close square to each other in electional astrology, because currently transit Saturn is in Aquarius, transit Uranus is in Taurus. They're making a square with each other. Uranus again could be connected with lightning. Saturn can be about difficulties and sorrow, and it's really when you have planets like that, they're adversarial, and you have the planet Saturn connected with, again connected with sorrow, with sadness, despondency, squaring Uranus, the planet connected with electricity, with lightning. It can increase collectively, I would say, greater propensity of some kind of a situation with lightning that people would have to endure. And the thing about this too is it's also situation. I mean, looking at her chart as well. Sadly, Pluto. She does have Pluto in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius could be associated with sports, and it's interesting because she died while she was training for some Olympic event, being an Olympic hopeful. I understand Pluto is generational, but it doesn't mean it can't be expressed in something with the sign that it is in for some people in certain instances. Hold on a moment, people. Now the thing, it's interesting, of course, I mean the ascendant again is unknown, but it would not surprise me if she may have had a Taurus ascendant, or even, or maybe a Cancer ascendant. I mean, Taurus ascendant could have likely put, or at least given, it would have, well, Taurus ascendant could have given a very good chance of transit Uranus hitting the ascendant, and you're talking then about transit Uranus associated with lightning hitting the physical body. And the thing is, either in a Cancer ascendant could have put the, at least maybe I would say, could have had a good chance of putting natal Uranus in Aquarius in the 8th house of death. And so those are some things I'm looking at as far as possible ascendant or rising sign that she may have. And the thing is too, and I'm just looking to see if there's anything else as far as transits and natal placements that might have correlated with her passing. And oh, another thing I noticed too is that transit Pluto was also not far from her natal Neptune at the time of her passing. Pluto, of course, is it rules death, it's destructive energy. Neptune is associated with the sea. Now, Pluto, as far as orbs used, this transit of Pluto close to her natal Neptune would not be considered a conjunction in transit based on the orbs that astrologers use. But I don't think we could say definitively, say that, a planet is 4 or 5 transit planet is 4 or 5 degrees from a natal placement, that natal placement doesn't feel a vibration from the transiting planet. So anyways, really that's pretty much about it as far as anything as far as natal placements, transits that might have been tied into her passing. And only other thing I'm saying though is that it's interesting is that transit Mercury had just had recently made a separating conjunction from her natal south node in Pisces. And when you're talking about Mercury leaving the south node in some very extreme cases and negative manifestation, it could be the loss of breathing. And this was something that happened by sea. And again, Pisces can be connected with the water, and also the fact that when you have transits that involve the south node, you have conjunctions with them. I would say that could also manifest in the planet that's being contacted by the south node. It can be affected detrimentally, and it shows that this could be very negative news in connection with her at this time. So, and it was something that happened in the water. Again, Pisces can be associated with the water. And another thing too is that transit Uranus was also in the 10th house in the solar sunrise chart for her. And it's really getting, sadly, 10th house could be connected with notoriety and recognition, and Uranus again could be associated with lightning. It could also be a way where she was put into the spotlight in a very kind of bizarre or unusual manner. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.